Welcome to Spooky News from Spooky Ventures for March 27th, 2020. It's a pretty safe bet. Everybody's been staying at home watching movies a lot. Well, I don't know the watching movies part, not necessarily, but hopefully you're keeping it spooky as you're staying home for this whole pandemic thing. I think a lot of the world's pretty much on lockdown at the moment. So hope everybody's keeping it safe, and let's get to the spooky news. Just a little bit of a reminder, Spooky Ventures is in general an interactive site, or it's supposed to be, and the Spooky Ventures YouTube channel, of all things, is supposed to be very interactive. So please let us know what you're watching these days. It seems like everybody's locked in, so what you've been watching, and let us know what you found, anything good to stream, comment on our videos, like our videos, share our videos, and in general, wow, hey, in general, interact. Let us know you're out there. This is a time of I was going to say the time of the year, but this is the time of our lives when interacting online is some real social interaction, so be sure and interact. Everybody needs some social interaction these days. Seems like we haven't had a lot of UFO news lately. There's a new list out of the top 5 most famous UFO incidents in history, and of course you got Roswell topping the list, and there's the USS Nimitz UFO encounter, and that's half the list on those. So I'm not going to give you the rest of the list. Be sure to check out the article and refresh your memory on some UFO history. I knew several of these, but I didn't know all of them. Perhaps they're not that famous after all, but have a look and see what you think. If you'd like to read a good ghost story, a purportedly true one, there's one that took place in Rome, Georgia, that's been included in a new article in a newspaper in that town, Rome. And it's about a ghost in a cemetery and a detective who got the call, and that's who tells the story. And have a look at the article. It's good fun this time of year. Well, this time of the... What is this? I don't even know. You can't call it this time of year. It's not like something comes around. I guess this time in our lives, we could use some diversion, right? As I said, this is a good time for some diversion, and some spooky stories are good for that. And there's a new one that's come out. I mean, it's not a new story, I'm sure, but there's a new story about it, about a supposed haunting at a railroad crossing in San Antonio, Texas. Now, it's the classic story, school bus hit by train. Now, if you've done any research, as I have, on haunted train crossings, that's probably the most common story about them. A school bus gets hit by children gets hit by a train. There's one in near Chicago I wrote about in Spooky Burr one that has the exact same story attributed to it. And it's so common, it's like a cliche almost, but that's the story on this one. And you know what? Somewhere it probably did happen. Well, I remember in Cary, Illinois, when a school bus did get hit by a train, but I haven't heard any stories of that crossing being haunted. But in any event, maybe one of these places it actually did happen. Most of them, you research it and it turns out there's no record of that ever having happened. But the stories remain, and they're fun stories to read, whether you believe they're true or not. That's kind of how I look at all paranormal stories. If you believe them, great. If you don't, great. They're still a fun, spooky story. I mean, I don't believe Frankenstein existed, nor do I believe Dracula existed, but I still enjoy the stories. So have a read and see if it helps give you some diversion. Have you heard of the Winchester Mystery House? You may have even been there. It's supposedly haunted, but it also is notable because it was the granddaughter of the Winchester Rifles company, the founder or whatever, and she was convinced that the only way to keep ghosts from finding her was to keep adding on to the house. So she would just hire people to add rooms on in places and hallways and stairs that go nowhere. And so it's open for the public. And there's a nice article about it saying it's the best. It is the best. Let's see what it says exactly. The best haunted house there is. But read the article. But the cool thing is, right now with the coronavirus pandemic going on, they've got a virtual tour up there. Now, I don't think they mentioned that in the article. I just sort of skimmed through the article. I don't think they actually mentioned that. But I'll include the link for that too. And you can take a virtual video tour of the Winchester Mystery House yourself right now. So have a look at that and enjoy. Are you a fan of horror comic books? They certainly have quite a following. I've been a fan since I was a kid. And there's a new article about EC Comics and talks about how they were the ones who really started it all. And I remember when I was a kid, the EC Comics had already been out so long and were pretty rare and hard to get a hold of, but there were always these reprints that they had of them that were cool, and I collected a lot of those. So I found this article to be pretty fascinating stuff. So if you're into horror comic books and you want to learn more about EC, which really were it was the company that really started the whole thing, um, you really should check out this article. So you say you can't get enough Robert Englund. You've seen his new show probably, right? The True Terror. I believe it's debuted. In any event, he, in an interview fairly recently, said that he's going to be shooting a scene for a show that he describes as terribly popular, but that was all he said about it. And a lot of people are speculating perhaps it's American Horror Story, but in any event, the interview was recorded before Hollywood shut down, so I don't know if he actually got the scene filmed or not. But we'll see. In any event, if it didn't, it probably will get filmed when things open back up. The world of horror, and particularly Lovecraftian horror, lost a giant this week when Stuart Gordon passed away at the age of 72. Now, when I wrote The Strange Sound of Cthulhu, a lot of people got the impression that I didn't like his films because I talked about how I was not addressing songs that were related to were based on his films rather than Lovecraft's works. It wasn't that I don't like his films. It was actually that I just was focusing strictly on stuff that was inspired by Lovecraft's writings, period. Not the movies that were inspired from it. In other words, not second generation. I really love his movies. Reanimator and From Beyond. They're brilliant. They're not as closely tied to Lovecraft's works as some other stuff, but they're just a lot of fun, and they're crazy over-the-top movies. So this is a big loss for fans of Lovecraftian horror. Rest in peace, sir. Rest in peace. With everybody home streaming, there's a new list out that should be helpful. Here it's the scariest, spookiest horror movies on Netflix. It includes the original Candyman, The Apostle, and some other good movies. Don't know that I've seen a lot of them, so perhaps you've missed some of these as well. Obviously, I've seen the Candyman, but be sure to check out the list and maybe give you an idea of some things to look for on Netflix. So, if you want to know just how big an impact the coronavirus is having on horror movies, there's a new article from Screen Rant that collects or lists and talks about all the movies, horror movies anyway, that have been delayed from the coronavirus pandemic. So I'll share that one, and you can have a look and see. I've been removing stuff from our calendar, obviously, because these things are coming out on time, so we'll be adjusting them to whenever they eventually come out. Talking about those streaming lists, Paste has one of the 80 best horror movies on Amazon Prime right now. Now, obviously, I'm not going to go over a whole list of 80 movies, but if you want to find some stuff to stream, there's really not a lot of better places to go than this list. I did see a lot of movies I like on it, and hopefully you will find some old favorites and some new ones that you haven't heard of to check out. Are you a fan of the Conjuring series? Well, The Conjuring 3, according to the writer of the movie, is going to be a bit different from the first two. It's not going to be a horror, I mean, it's going to be a horror movie, but it's not going to be a haunted house movie at all. In fact, it's all about a murder trial. It's called The Conjuring, The Devil Made Me Do It. So we'll see how that turns out and see what you guys think of it when it comes out. I mentioned last week that Shudder is giving away a free month of streaming to sort of help out with the people who are locked into their houses right now. You may wonder what great horror movies should I watch. I mean, Shudder's all horror, so there's got to be tons of stuff out there. I've yet to sign into it, but I'm going to probably this weekend. In any event, Dread Central has a list of 10 awesome horror movies to stream on Shudder. So it could give you a really, really good place to start. They've got movies like Tigers Are Not Afraid, Mandy, The Ranger. I want to see Mandy because it's Nicolas Cage in a horror movie, and I just watched him in Color Out of Space and thought he was great. So, in any event, I'll share the article. You can check out the list and stream some stuff on Shudder. Well, with the world locked down, there aren't any new movies opening, but there is one new birthday. Next Wednesday is Lon Chaney's birthday, so celebrate the man, the legend, Lon Chaney. And that's a wrap for this edition of Spooky News. Please be sure to check in with us again next week. And in the meantime, stay safe out there, folks, and wash your hands. Spooky Ventures is the home for spooky content and spooky merchandise on the web. Check it out today at spookyventures.com. And remember, always keep it spooky.